West Palm Beach City Attorney Claudia Mckenna, thank you for a couple of minutes. Why don't we start by talking about the agreement as it involves the land that was given to Digital Domain from the city of West Palm Beach. It contains what's called a reverter clause. A lot of people are asking, what does that mean? Tell me, what is a reverter clause? What does it mean as far as the city getting its piece of land back from Digital Domain?
Well, a reverter clause is what we use legally to say this deed that we're giving you for this land is subject to conditions. And if those conditions aren't met, the land comes back to us. And that's what's important. What's also important is that the conditions have not been met. And Digital Domain has acknowledged that in their bankruptcy filing. They've said, we know the conditions have not been met. They had to give us building plans for a 150,000 square foot building. They had to get level 3 site plan approval, and they had to get construction financing for that 150,000 square foot building. None of that has happened, and it can't happen in the 3 months that are remaining before the reverter automatically triggers sending the land back to the city.
You referenced 3 months. The deadline for them to reach those benchmarks is December 31st, 2012, the end of this year.
That's correct.
What's the likelihood that any of those benchmarks will be met? And in fact, hasn't someone from Digital Domain commented on that as well?
They actually have filed a sworn affidavit in the bankruptcy court that says, we know this land is subject to a reverter. We know it's subject to conditions. We know those conditions have not been fulfilled. So it is my expectation that the bankruptcy court will take that affidavit, that sworn statement at its word, and release the land to the city.
Why was a reverter clause put in there in the first place?
In order to ensure that the developer performed. We typically do that in any of our major transactions. We want to be certain that there are deliverables all along the way that give the maximum protection to the city.
In addition to the reverter clause, there has been a lot of other questions that have been asked publicly, now specifically about mortgages that have been taken out on that piece of property. Digital Domain apparently has taken out several mortgages on the piece of property. How does that affect our ability to get that property back at the end of the year?
That's a really important question. These mortgages were recorded in May of 2012 and August of 2012. And the development agreement that we have with Digital Domain was recorded in 2010. So it was a matter of public record. And that development agreement says you can't do a mortgage other than for construction financing. It has a simple provision that says you can't mortgage this property or transfer or pledge or assign or sell without coming back and getting the written consent of the CRA. So that didn't happen. And the development agreement says that any effort like that is void and of no effect. And it is certainly, from a legal standpoint, the next step will be a conversation with these mortgage holders to educate them about the development agreement and see if we can't agreeably release the land so that when we go into the bankruptcy court, it's very easy for the court to just release the land to the city.
You mentioned that these mortgages did not come back to the CRA, did not come back to the city according to the terms of the agreement. Did we know these mortgages existed before we read about them in the bankruptcy filings? We
did not. We learned about the mortgages last week, and of course that's a default under the agreement. The fact that Digital Domain didn't come and ask us for our consent. So that's just part of the legal condition that the mortgages have at this point.
In addition to the land, there was another part of the agreement which had to do with giving money, grant money to Digital Domain. $10 million was set aside, $2 million was paid to Digital Domain. First question is, why was the deal structured the way it was that all the money wasn't paid out at once?
As I indicated, when we do a major transaction like this, what's important is that we maximize the protection of the taxpayer dollars. So the CRA, when it spends its redevelopment money, makes sure that there are deliverables, that there is something in exchange for the money, that we can look at something or know something has occurred that has the value that we've assigned to it. And so in this transaction, we had a grant agreement, and these were grant funds. In other words, they didn't have to be paid back. So we had to have something that was really important. In this case, the first $2 million piece of the grant was for accreditation of the school and for Florida State to actually come to the city of West Palm Beach with a Bachelor of Fine Arts program. That occurred, and we paid over the grant. And so as we sit here today, we paid that $2 million. We have Florida State University's film school here in West Palm Beach up and running, and we have a fully accredited 4-year degree program.
Okay. City Attorney Claudia Mckenna, thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.